everybody, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video is video number 3 for our winter crochet along, and we're making a Christmas elf. As you can see, this is Posh Pete, and on the first video I gave you all the instructions and supplies that you're going to need to make a Christmas elf for yourself. In yesterday's video, we did the head and body of our elf. Let me grab the one I'm working on. Here she is. I'm making my Posh Pete into a Posh Polly. And I had some people tell me I need to name her Polly because I couldn't think of a name for her. But anyway, I'm making her into a girl. And I'm using the blue and pink colors for her costume. And so yesterday we made Posh Polly or Posh Pete's by head and body. We added the little ears and eyes and nose. Yes, she or he has a long ways to go. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make the legs, and I've got one already made, as well as the hands. So we're going to make 2 hands with pink mittens and 2 legs with pink boots. Now, you can continue to make your Posh Pete or Polly in Christmas colors. He has black boots and green mittens, but you can do them in any colors that you want to. What you're going to need to make a set of arms and a set of legs for your Christmas elf is, of course, your yarns. And I'm using the same yarns that I used before, the pink and the blue. And I'm making her have pink mittens. And here's the blue from her costume. And I'm giving her pink boots and her blue leg. And again, remember, choose the colors that you want for your Christmas elf. Just make sure you're using worsted weight or medium weight number 4 yarns. We're going to be stitching today with our F hook. It's a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook. You're going to need a needle for weaving in your ends and for sewing on your arms and legs. You'll need a stitch marker to mark your rows because we are going to be stitching in the round. There won't be any joining, just stitching in the round. And then you'll also need a little bit of stuffing to stuff those arms and legs. And that's what you're going to need for today's demonstration. We're going to start first with the leg. And of course, this is the one that I already have done. We're going to begin with the little pink boot or black or whatever color you want to make the boot for your elf. And then we'll be changing to blue and making the second leg. And remember, you need 2 legs. Okie dokie. All right, we're going to begin with a slip knot. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to place 6 single crochets in the second chain from the hook. There's our first one. Here's our second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so now we're going to take our stitch marker because we need to mark our rows because we're stitching in rounds. We'll just put our stitch marker in there. And for row 2 or round 2, we're going to place 2 single crochets in each of the single crochets around. So here's our first one of our next row. So we'll stitch 2, 1, 2, and we'll place 2 in each of those 6, which will give us 12. Here's 10, and here's our last one, 11, oops, got a fuzzball, and 12. All right, so we'll just take our stitch marker. Guess I'll pull it this way. It has a little bump on it. And I'll stick it in there. All right, so now for row 3, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 12 single crochets. And 12. And again, I'm going to move that stitch marker. I keep pulling it the wrong direction. And I really like this kind because it's kind of a jelly. And I believe I got it in a kit from, here it is, Boy. It came in a little plastic thing like this, if you're looking for those. All right, so that's row 3. Now, for row 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, for 5 more rows, we're going to repeat this and stitch 1 single crochet in each of the 12 single crochets around. So, for 5 more rows, 1 single crochet in each of the 12 single crochets around. And that will get us up through row 8. I've completed the 8 rows for the boot of my elf, and I'm going to flip the boot out because this is the outside that I want to be showing. There's my stitch marker. I took that out just because I'm getting ready to change colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut off that pink, and I'm going to bring in the blue because that's what I'm doing the body of the costume for my elf in. All right, and the way we'll add our new color in is we'll put our hook through those last 2 loops of the previous stitch and pull that blue in, or whatever colors that you're using, of course. Put those down inside. And so now we're ready for row 9. We need to put our stitch marker back in, but I'm not going to do it on this row since it's my first row of blue and I don't want it to be in my way. And I'll be able to count because of the change in the color. And we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets around. And you should have 12 because we haven't added any additional stitches to our boot. All right, so now I'm back around. I'm going to put my stitch marker in now because now that I'm going to be using just a solid blue color. Get around that string. There we go. All right, so now on row 10, we're going to do some increase stitches because we want the leg of our elf to just kind of come out just a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to place 1 single crochet in the first single crochet, and then in the next one we're going to stitch 2. 1 and 2. Then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in the next and 2 single crochets in the next. And this is going to give us 18 single crochets instead of 12. And it's just going to make the leg come out just a little bit for our elf leg. So 1 single crochet in the next and 2 single crochets in the next, working all the way around this leg. And like I said, this row will have 18 single crochets. Alrighty, let's see. That's 17 and 18. Alright, so I'm going to move my stitch marker again up where it needs to go. There we go. And you can see that it made it flare out just a little bit, just to give it that look of a boot with kind of a floopy pant leg there. Because the pant leg is stuffed in the boot, right? Alright, so that was row 10. Now, for row 11, we're just going to stitch one single crochet in each of those 18 single crochets. I'm going to move my stitch marker because I've completed row number 11. And what we're going to be doing for rows 12 through 24 is we're just going to repeat row 11. One single crochet in each single crochet around up through row 24. I've completed those rows. I'm going to take my stitch marker out. And one thing, here is where we join back here. We want that to be the back of the leg. And so what we're going to do is we're going to single crochet to the side, which will make it easier for us to stuff and close the leg. There we go. One more in there. So now it's to the side. I'm going to go ahead and tie that off, and I've already cut that yarn. That way our leg is flat. When we turn it over, we'll be able to sew it closed from this edge. All right? So the next thing we need to do is add a little stuffing. And what I do is I take a little and I shove it right down into the toe of the boot. And it doesn't take very much because you want these to be movable and squeezable, not so tight that it just sticks straight out. All right? But it's up to you how much stuffing you want to put in there. Now don't fill it all the way to the top because we need to be able to close this. All right? So now that I've got my legs stuffed, I'm going to put my hook through the first single crochet here and the last one on that side. And we're just going to stitch some slip stitches across. So we'll go from this side and slip stitches and stitch slip stitches across. And we'll do that to close up the end of our leg. Now I ran out of yarn because I cut my tail too short. Make sure when you go to tie off here before you close that you leave yourself a good amount of yarn, about 24, maybe 30 inches, because we're going to slip stitch this closed, and we want to have enough left so that we can use this yarn to sew it on to our elf. All right, so don't cut it short like I did. Make sure you cut it long, about 24 to 30 inches. And I always say that it's better to have too much leftover yarn than not enough, like I just did. So here's our elf body and our two legs, and we're going to join the legs to the bottom of the elf body. And we're going to do that with a needle. So what I want you to do is take the tail end of one of your legs, and we'll need to make sure that we get these on evenly. So you're going to have to squish them up a little bit because we want them to be eased in. And what I do is I take it and turn it this way, and I put that one leg just like that. Let me move that one out of the way so I can show you. And I just stitch right in that corner. There we go. And then I make sure that I mark this in half. And so I'll take my stitch marker and I'll put it right in the center, and that's going to tell me don't go across that center. Make sure you have room for both legs. Okay, so then I'll just set that right there, and it's called easing in or squishing in, making sure your leg doesn't go across there. And we're just going to make some stitches, and I go back and forth, that way I know it's going to work. So I'll make a little bit bigger stitches first, to get me to that center. Okay, and then I'll make some nice tight stitches right at the center, and then I'll just go back through and make those stitches just a little bit closer, so I know those legs are going to stay on. And I might keep going until I run out of yarn. One thing to remember when you're making little stuffed things like this, they're going to get played with, and you want to make sure that all the pieces, especially arms and legs that are going to get pulled, are stitched on nice and tightly. Okay, so now I'm happy with the way that is. I'm going to go right in here and weave that in, going one way. We can take that stitch marker out now. Then I'll come up and come the other way, and go back the other way, because I just want to make sure this leg is going to stay put. And then the last thing I'll do is I'll go right up inside that stuffing, kind of move my needle around and then pull it through. I'll pull it up, just make one little knot, and that's going to help it not pull through that stuffing so much. Clip it, being careful not to clip my elf. So now our elf has the two legs, and I wanted to show you, if you want your elf's leg to have a bend in it so that you can bend it up and down, what I do is I go about halfway down, and I just take a needle and yarn of the same color, leave a piece there, and you just stitch going back and forth. Just a few times. You can see it's already making an indentation. All right. Now make sure we pull this tight. There we go. We'll pull that to the back, and you can see that makes a nice indentation, so that if you want to bring it up like this and wrap their arms around their knees, you can. Now for this one, I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that string out. And the next thing that we're going to do is make the elf arms. To make the elf arms is a little bit similar to the legs. The only difference is we don't increase to the 18 stitches here. We're going to be staying at 12. And then we're also going to add this little bump here to make it appear like she's wearing, or he's wearing, a pair of mittens. And again, I'm doing mine in the pink and the blue, and you can do yours in any colors that you want to. We're going to begin the arm, or the mitten, the same way with a slip knot, chain 2, and then 6 single crochets in that second chain from the hook. All right, I've got my stitch marker here handy. And also, if you don't have a stitch marker, you can always use just a different color of yarn and wrap it across each row so you can keep track of your rows. We're going to, again, like we did with the boot on the leg, stitch 2 single crochets in each of the 6 single crochets. 11 and 12. Now, we're not going to be doing any increases. We're just going to stay with the 12 single crochets. There we go. So that was row 2, and for 2 more rows on the 5th row, I'm going to show you how to do the bump for the mitten. So what we're going to do is we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in those 12 single crochets for 2 more rows, which would be up through row 4. Alright, I've got my 4 rows stitched. I'm going to remove my stitch marker, and then I'm going to flip out my mitten, because this is the outside, and we're going to begin on the 5th row to make that bump. I'm going to put my stitch marker back in so I don't lose track of where I'm at. Alright, and this is the way to do the mitten for the thumb bump. Let's just tuck that inside there, that extra string. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to put 1 single crochet in the first 4 single crochets. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're going to chain 3. Whoops, there we go. And then we're going to slip stitch right in that same stitch. Basically what we did is called a peacock stitch. Alright, so now we're going to go to the next single crochet and continue working around. Because we didn't add any more stitches, we still have 12. We want to keep it that way because that peacock stitch for the thumb bump was worked in that 5th single crochet. Alright, now I'm back around to my stitch marker. I need to quit pulling it the wrong direction. Alright, there we go. So now, how do we do row 6, right? Because it might be a little confusing because we have that bump. So what we'll do is we'll put a single crochet, there we go, in those first 4 stitches, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to push that thumb bump forward and put our single crochet behind it in that single crochet where we stitched it. Get around there. Alright, and then we'll just go right to the next single crochet. And see how that pushes that out so it looks like a little thumb in our mitten? And then we'll just continue on around stitching our single crochets. Oops, there we go. I do struggle a little bit with these smaller hooks because of the arthritis in my fingers, and so sometimes they just don't want to work right. There we go. Now we're back around to our stitch marker. And before I go farther, I'm going to move my stitch marker, and then I want to show you how it should look. Here's our thumb bump. Alright. Okay, now for our next row, we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. And the more you stitch around, you'll see how that's going to look more and more like a little mitten. All Alright, so I'm back around where my stitch marker is. Looks like I need one more stitch there. And again, you can see that little thumb bump sticking out. Looks like a little mitten. Alright, we're going to do one more row in the pink for our mitten, and then we're going to switch back to our blue color, or whatever colors you're using for your Christmas elf. So I'm stitching one single crochet in each of the single crochets around, and we still should only have 12 single crochets. Alright, let's see. I think I need one more. And now we're going to change colors. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my pink. Bring back in my costume color, which is blue. And bring our color in those 2 loops from the previous single crochet. We'll snug those down, stick those down inside, and then we'll stitch one single crochet in each stitch around. Alright, so now I'm back around, and I'm going to move my stitch marker up because we don't want to lose our row. And what you'll do now is you'll continue to stitch the rows of blue, and you'll stitch those rows up through row 19. So now we're on row 9, correct? And so now we're going to do 10 more rows of the blue so that we can get to row 19. I've completed up through row 19 for my sleeve or my arm, and I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to leave a good amount this time. I'd rather, like I said, have too much than not enough. And what we're going to do, we're going to take off our stitch marker, and we're going to stitch over to the side so it just makes it easier for closing. I think I'm going to do one more just to get it right there on the side. 3 or 4, just depends on how you want it to lay. There's my thumb bump. And so now I'm going to grab a little bit of stuffing, stuff some down into the arm and then into the mitten. I want to make sure that mitten is formed nicely because it's super duper cute. Alright, then we'll get some more stuffing for the arm. Get in there. And remember, don't stuff it all the way to the end because we're going to close that up. Alright, so then we'll just do that flat. And we'll close it up the same way we did with the leg. We'll just do some slip stitches. And I like to use slip stitches when I'm closing these because it gives me something to sew onto the body. It's like a little edge. We're just going across just like we did with the top of the leg, closing up the little arm. There we go. Then we'll just pull that through. Move that out of the way. And now we're going to put our arm on our elf. Now this one I went ahead and sewed on. And with the way you line it up, what I do is I go below the ear and I count down 2 rows because we're going to be putting that nice fuzzy collar on. I want to have room for that around the neck. Alright, so I'm going to thread the tail of yarn. And then I'm going to place my arm on. And then we're going to move it up because we're going to be stitching underneath to help hide our stitches. Okay, make sure we're on the right row, down 2, lined up with the ear. And I scrunch it in just a little so it's not too far out. And again, I go across like I did with the leg, and basically this first row of stitches, they're farther apart. They're just to place it where we want it. Okay, that way we can kind of take a look at it. If it's not where we want it, we can pull those stitches out and redo it. Okay, so I'm going to take a look, make sure everything's lined up. Got my shoulders lined up, my rows lined up. It's underneath my silly ears. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and make sure it stays in place. We want to sew it nice and tightly. So we'll just go back through and make some whip stitches. And like I said, you want to make sure those arms are on tight, because more than likely whoever picks this up to play with it's going to toss it around the room and hang on to it by its arms. And so we want to make sure those arms are going to stay put when it's being played with. As I think the success of a toy is when it's played with. All right, that's on nice and tight, so we'll do the same thing. I'm going to go this way, weave that in a little bit, go backwards over those stitches, and then we'll just go right down inside, turn to his back or her back, and pull that through. Make that little knot. Make sure you don't clip the back of your elf. So now my little Christmas elf has arms and legs. Tomorrow's video, or video number 4, we're going to add the little fuzzy band and the cute little fuzzy collar. And then on Friday, we're going to add the hat and give our elf a happy Christmas smile.